All right, so let's get to the dreams and these he's in prison, and um and the two prisoners now they have dreams. So all right, so I'll,
Right.
I'll stop there because I kind of went off on a tangent there. But what questions did you have then surrounding that whole?
Okay, so with the cupbearer
Yeah.
and the baker, they had the dream and he interpreted it. And let's see if I can. 40 verse 23.
Okay,
It's
40
at the very end.
okay, 40 verse 23.
Well, maybe it was before that. When he asked the cupbearer to talk to Pharaoh about him. I don't know.
Yeah, that's 23. It says, well, what you have in 23 is him forgetting to do that. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him.
Right.
So he said, hey, look, it worked out for you. It's almost like this. You liked it, so refer a friend,
Right.
right? So it worked out nicely. When you're restored, why don't you go ahead and kind of help me out too,
Yeah.
And the cupbearer forgets about him.
But I was gonna ask because later when he interprets Pharaoh's dream, he says it's the Lord's work, and
Yeah.
not him.
Yeah.
Now, did the cupbearer forget because I don't know how to put this? Not that Joseph was trying to make it seem like it was him doing it in exchange for his freedom
Yeah.
instead of the Lord. I don't know how to explain that.
Well, no. I think Joseph. I mean, look, Joseph. This whole time, he had the dreams at the very beginning of his narrative. That's why when you hit 37, it really is the Joseph and his brothers narrative, right? He has the dreams, and they're, the interpretations are obvious from, and it's very clear that this is. I think you're supposed to understand this as God is the one, he's providing the dreams.
Right.
For Joseph, he is providing interpretations. He is the one overseeing this whole thing.
Yeah.
And even when the brothers kind of, when they try to kill him or try to sell him into slavery, and none of it works out.
Right.
None of again, completely incompetent in their dealings with all of this. None of it works out the way they think it's going to. But even then, you see that God is still kind of in charge of this whole thing.
Right.
Okay. So I think Joseph is very aware of that. Look, the cupbearer and the baker, they've got dreams, and Joseph can interpret the dreams. And I think at this point it's pretty well enough established that he and his family, they worship God.
Right.
And now he's going to give a kind of a divine interpretation of the dreams.
Yeah.
So now, of course, because one of them is a very positive interpretation, I think then he can say, hey, by the way,
Okay. Yeah.
why don't you help me out?
Kind of throw it in there.
When you're there, just know. I mean, it's not like it's a very reasonable request.
Right. Yeah.
This is God's hand in all of this, and it's a divine interpretation. It's like, maybe Pharaoh might appreciate
Right.
someone who can, who God speaks to him this way, and why not?
Well, and also I was thinking because if he stayed in prison, Pharaoh wouldn't have been able to find him
that's right.
whenever
That's right.
he.
And it's only when Pharaoh
Had
has
his
the
dream.
dream that the cupbearer then remembers him.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And one thing I think that, we've kind of characterized, we've talked about these, Joseph, his father Jacob, and his dealings with Laban and Rachel and Leah and his mom and his dad and his brother and their, Isaac's then, dad and mom. So Jacob's grandparents, Abraham and Sarah, and
Right.
and all of that, and you kind of see them tricking each other a lot.
Yeah.
Joseph kind of seems to be a little different. You don't really see him trick anyone.
Right.
I mean, they all kind of trick each other, but Joseph, everything kind of changes. Again, this is what's one thing that sets the narratives apart. The narratives are different from each other, right? That Joseph seems to be a fairly stand-up guy
Right.
who is just really cocky and arrogant as when he's younger.
Yeah.
Okay, and which is important.
I can see that for sure. Well, I feel like nothing bad happens to him. He's just walking.
Well, yeah.
Maybe not in the moment, he probably thinks that this is terrible. You know, he's in
Well, yeah,
prison.
the same thing. It's almost like in some sense, everything bad happens to him,
Right, yeah.
but it's almost because like everything good happened to him,
Yeah.
right? And so and God is watching over him. Yeah, so on the one hand, he is in some of the worst situations. On the other hand, he's untouchable.
Right,
You know, it's like both and.
yeah.
And so he seems to be a stand-up guy who's very arrogant and cocky and annoying.
Right,
Okay, but you see, like the whole thing with Potiphar's wife is like he's not going to. He does not make advances on her like she claims, right?
Right.
She does. She's the one that does that.
yeah.
And with the baker and the cupbearer, he, you know, I mean, one of the dreams is a bad dream, right? The baker.
Right,
And he tells him the dream, and the cupbearer, he tells him his dream, and but in some sense, it's almost like, hey, you know, it's an encouraging message. And same with Pharaoh. Like, we've got to figure this with the whole Pharaoh dreams. You know, we've got to figure this out,
Right.
Because if we don't, a lot of people are going to die.
yeah.
And so, and another thing with Joseph, he seems to be very competent because his father does. You know, we don't really know. Well, he's the son of Rachel, so we know why he loved him. But also he seems to be, in contrast to his brothers, who do appear, and even Judah with the whole thing with Tamar, they do appear to be somewhat incompetent. Or at
Right.
least that's the way that they are. That's the way that they are characterized.
Yeah.
In the narrative, and but Joseph is characterized the opposite way because all right, so his dad makes him an overseer, and maybe that's just because he likes him more. But then he goes to Potiphar's house, and he's given quite a bit of authority. Then he goes to the prison, and he's given quite a bit of authority.
Right.
And then he goes to Pharaoh, and he has, you know, he interprets a dream, and he's also given quite a bit of authority.
Right.
You know, he rules over all of
Yeah,
Egypt
a lot,
next
a
to
lot,
Pharaoh,
lot of
right?
authority.
And he's and his plan works.
Right.
And it's almost like he seems to be a very competent person. And so I think that's an interesting part of the way that he's characterized. He's very cocky and arrogant, but he also is he's also seems to be morally conscious and very competent.
Right.
And maybe at the end of his life he's not so cocky and arrogant, even though he just played with his brothers a little bit, but they kind of deserve that, you know. So what I thought was interesting about is the two people that are in prison with him are the cupbearer and the baker.
Right.
It's like, why those two people?
Yeah.
Those are both two positions that give things to the Pharaoh that he's going to ingest.
Okay.
So my guess, and this is just speculation, you know, as you can kind of have fun and think about. My guess is that maybe there was an attempted poisoning on the Pharaoh,
Okay.
and he puts them both in prison and says, you know what, we don't know where the poison came from,
Right.
but it's one of you two,
Yeah.
you know, and
That's okay.
they over the course for whatever reason they decided it was the baker, you know, and because cupbearers would actually they would squeeze it directly, like the grapes, squeeze it directly
Okay.
into the cup and then give it to the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Right? So it's their job. It's a protective job, which means also that the Pharaoh is not drinking wine, but drinking grape juice.
Grape juice, right.
So
I've always thought about that. I know this is kind of off topic,
Yeah.
but in like that area, Middle Eastern area,
Yeah.
and
in this case, Egypt. So.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Would grapes or wine, was that just like considered a kind of grape juice, or would people drink that just to drink something flavorful, or
In
would they?
this area in the ancient world, at this time they couldn't preserve grape juice,
Right.
but there's also natural yeasts on the skins, grape skins,
Right.
and so no matter what happened, if you intentionally set out to ferment them, make wine, that you know, fine, you can have wine. If you don't, eventually it's going to turn to wine.
Right.
So for them, like in the Bible, you actually see this, that there's actually not really much of a distinction between what we would call grape juice and what we would call wine.
Right.
So, in fact, the word, I mean, you see the word, yain in Hebrew, the oin root in Greek, and it's like vine and wine, or it's like wine is just kind of like the fruit of the vine.
Right.
It's so not the same kind of distinctions we have today.
Yeah, right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd always thought that, but I've never gotten like a clear answer.
Yeah, no, again, part of it was just a matter of timing, if anything.
Right.
And now, of course, they knew the distinction between,
Oh yeah.
if it was, strong and not strong, like they could, but yeah, they didn't have a way to keep it from fermenting, even if they wanted to. But something, you even see this. You see this picture in the prophets of the cupbearer for in Israel squeezing the grapes into the cup, and which kind of shows that the cup it's the fruit of the vine, but even there, when they do it, it's not turning into grape juice within a matter of minutes before
Right.
the ruler drinks it.
Right.
Or it's not turning into wine
Yeah.
over a matter of minutes before the ruler drinks it. It's just grape juice.
Right.
So
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
yeah.
And now, did they have like fruits like that, or was it just things that grew on a vine that didn't take much water?
Oh, I think they had different. Wait, you mean like just in the area in general?
Yeah.
They had all kinds. When the Israelites leave Egypt, they say, "We wish we could have melons and
Okay.
all
yeah.
kinds of." They even
Yeah.
say things like onions and garlic and leeks. They had all kinds of different
Right.
things, and if we could be eating these things in Egypt, oh yeah, they had. And I don't know a whole lot about. I know beer has been in Egypt for a very long time and was in this period, but I don't know a whole lot about the culture of that. Like I couldn't say a
Yeah.
lot about that specifically for Egypt.
Right.
So all I can say is kind of generalizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. But yeah, that's all I had about the dreams.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I have. Let's see. Yeah, I have some about Egypt and Joseph being appointed
Okay.
ruler of Egypt. If you want me to go on about that, I can.
Let's do it. Sure.
Okay,
Why
yeah.
not?
So let's see. In chapter 41,
Yep.
Pharaoh says, only with respect to the throne.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
does that mean, because Joseph has total control over Egypt, does he have more control over Pharaoh?
No. That's the only
Okay.
place he does. If I
Because I took that as he has more control over him. He's just not Pharaoh.
we said only as regards the throne will I be greater than you. So he is basically the vicar of Pharaoh. He is the one. He is to everyone else. He is Pharaoh.
Right.
And the only one who can out Pharaoh Joseph is Pharaoh
Pharaoh,
himself.
right.
Right. So
That
he
makes
has administrative control over all of Egypt.
Right.
And only with regards to like ultimate power does Pharaoh have authority over Joseph.
Okay.
So Joseph can do what he wants until Pharaoh says don't do that.
Right. Makes sense.
Right. Also, you have to understand that the Egyptian kings, these pharaoh, they were also viewed as like the high priests of Egypt in some sense.
Right.
They're the
Now,
sons of the gods.
Yeah, I was gonna say at this time were they still divine? Was that still believed?
Yeah, well, they had gone through there had actually been a major change in Egypt around this time period.
Right.
Okay, and so there had been some religion changes, but yeah, I think here at this point, yes, they are regarded as divine.
Okay.
It is interesting, though, that I think it's interesting that this whole event does kind of coincide with a different, again, kind of a different way of going about the kingdom of Egypt. Again, this major transition that's happening in world history or Egyptian history at this time, because you notice something in the narrative that it makes it pretty clear. Remember, when Joseph he's very shrewd in the way that he deals with the people of Egypt. Okay?
Yeah.
And as time goes on, he actually gains property for the Pharaoh from all the people. So by the end of this, Pharaoh actually owns all of Egypt.
Really?
And before this, it doesn't seem like he did,
Right.
right? Because they're selling their land. They're selling their land to get food.
Okay.
And
yeah.
now it all belongs to Pharaoh, which says maybe it didn't belong to Pharaoh before.
Right. That makes
Which
sense.
I think is interesting, and probably again I'm not an Egyptologist, but I know there's a major transition taking place in Egypt at this time, and that might be that might be a I don't know, a sign of that, or
Right.
showing of that, at least as far as it's concerned for the narrative that we have in Genesis.
Right.
Right, might not be concerned with the transition, but you can kind of see it. You can see the symptoms of it in
Right,
Genesis,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
kind of cool, right?
So with the famine in Egypt,
Yeah.
was that not like only because of Joseph, but that was that sent there so that Joseph's brothers could find him?
I'm inclined to think. Well, we know, God even tells Abraham that his children are going to be enslaved. Okay,
Yeah.
and so if you read, anyone, it's written by Moses. So anyone who's reading this, they know that the slavery is going to be in Egypt,
Right.
right? So yeah, on the one hand, God is going to get his people to Egypt, and he does it through a famine. But on the other hand, at the end of Genesis, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. That's what Joseph tells his brothers. It also makes it sound like, I don't want to kind of put them in at odds with each other, but it also makes it sound like God also put Joseph there to save all of Egypt and the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, again, it's kind of both. And, right? But again, which is very characteristic of this narrative, the Joseph narrative and the Jacob narrative, is that you do see God at work, but just from a distance,
Right.
right? So
Yeah. With Joseph weeping, I think through 40
Yeah.
and 43.
Yep,
It
yep.
said it like five
Yeah.
or six times.
yeah, he loses it.
Yeah. Was there a reason it kept mentioning that, or he
Yeah.
just kept crying?
Well, I mean, I think he keeps, the whole thing with, he makes them go, the brothers come, he makes them go back and get Benjamin because he
Right.
wants to see his little brother,
Right.
Benjamin, as his one full
True brother.
brother, and that's what he wants, and Jacob's not going to let him go because he already lost the other son of Rachel. These are the
Right.
two sons of Rachel, right? You have to think, these are the two sons of Rachel, and Rachel's the wife that he loved, but the wife that he lost, right? And so he's not letting Benjamin go, but that's what Joseph wants. Joseph also knows that that's probably the only way to get Jacob to come.
Right.
So, and that's what he ends up doing, right? So, because he wants to see his father again too.
Yeah.
And he wants to see his brothers again too. And when he sees them, he recognizes them, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, it's like they're here.
Right.
They're here. And again, they don't know that he's in Egypt.
Right.
They don't know, which is important, but it's so often missed. They don't know, and so yeah, he tricks them into not just in bringing Benjamin, but then taking him in. In
Yeah.
arresting Benjamin after
Yeah.
they plant the cup in his bags and all
And
that
then,
stuff.
It was Judah that offered to be arrested in place of him, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, is it Judah or is it Reuben? But it might be. I think you're right. Let's see. It would make. Yeah, I think it is Judah. I can't find the.
Then
you're
Judah
right.
went up to him and said, "Please,
Right.
my lord, let your servant
Right.
speak a word to my lord."
And again, that's kind of a part of the characterization of Judah. Again, you see in this narrative, you have Joseph, who's arrogant but very competent, who ends up saving all of Egypt and surrounding areas. You see Reuben, who is kind of playing the older brother,
Yeah.
as he's supposed to. He's the firstborn, protective, but the brother who stands out the most is Judah.
Right.
And of course, he's the one that's going to end up with the birthright. Reuben slept with his dad's concubine. Okay. Simeon and Levi, the next two born, they did the whole thing with Shechem that we talked about.
Yeah.
And then there's Judah, number 4. And he ends up with the birthright. The scepter is never going to leave Judah. That's the prophecy. So in the characterization here in Genesis, Judah comes out very, very well.
Okay.
It also makes sense, then if you look later down the line, when the monarchy is started, Saul's the first king. He's not from the tribe of Judah. David is. David unites the whole kingdom.
Yeah.
Then after Solomon, David's son, Rehoboam is in charge, Solomon's son, and he messes things up because he's real cocky and arrogant, and the kingdom splits, and then there's Israel, the rest of the tribes in the north, and then Judah and kind of Benjamin in the south,
Okay.
going as named as the kingdom of Judah. And so you see Judah is Judah and his tribe are very positively viewed in the Old
Yeah.
Testament. Judah has the good kings. Judah has most of the prophets are from Judah.
Yeah.
Jerusalem, which has the palace and the temple, that city is the capital of the entire United Monarchy, is in Judah. Okay, and even when the Assyrians come in, 722 BC, they wipe out all the other tribes in the north, and they wipe out a lot of Judah, but some of Judah is preserved,
Right.
including Jerusalem. And the Babylonians come in, and they take the rest of Judah into exile, but then the Judahites do eventually return,
Right.
right? And so you get more Judah.
So now, are the Judahites now? Are they kind of Israelites now? Like Judahites then, Israelites now.
The Judahites are the ones that come back. They resettle the land under the Persians. The Greeks, march. Alexander, they march on the Persians. They call it the province of Judea,
Okay.
right? So in the 60s BC, then Pompey, General Pompey, friend and enemy of Julius Caesar, comes in, takes it for Rome.
Okay.
And so that's what we see in the New Testament is these are the Judeans. The Greeks also called them Jews.
Right.
Right? So that's where all that comes from. So the entire Old Testament is very pro-Judah.
Right.
Very pro-Judah. Not pro-other tribes,
Right,
but
yeah.
pro-Judah.
Okay.
And you see it here even in Genesis. Judah is characterized positively for the most part.
Right.
Right? And yeah.
I never put it together like that, I guess.
Yeah.
I just put when you make a puzzle and you
Yeah.
start it out and you got the outside first.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I have right now.
Yeah.
And now I just got to fill it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I believe that's all I had.
Okay. Well,
Oh, well, going back to the dreams, with Joseph meeting his brothers and everything, and,
Yeah.
they had to come buy the food off of them because
Yeah.
they couldn't grow food. Is that fulfilling the dream of them all bowing down to him? 'Cause
yes,
they
it
do
is.
end up bowing
Yes,
down
it
to
is.
him. Okay.
That's the fulfillment of the dream.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. Now it's the only time it happens, and even the sun and the moon, that seems to be the parents. That's why Jacob even rebukes them.
Right.
But I mean, maybe that's Pharaoh too. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't. Well, I guess he does have authority over Joseph still. But yeah, that is the dream. This is kind of the culmination of it. All of this has to happen, and the brothers do end up bowing down.
Right.
And whereas they wanted to kill him, he ends up saving their lives.
Yeah. Full circle moment.
It's a very well. Again, sometimes I think we don't appreciate how well written
yeah.
the Bible is in
Yeah.
places, and this is one of those where it's very tightly written, and a lot of goes together very nicely.
Right.
Yeah. So yes, that is the fulfillment of the original dreams.
And I completely forgot about it until thinking back on the end. But yeah, that's all I had for today.
Okay. Well, very good. Great conversation. Thank you
Yeah.
always for your questions and for
Yeah.
your thoughts, and
Thank you.
yeah. So, and thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.